Hey, welcome to another series of Culture Casts with Dustin Homan, which we will be talking about Dominican Republic, so stay tuned. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Culture Cast with Dustin Homan. This is perhaps one of my favorite programs that we do on a monthly basis. And the reason being is that Dustin Homan, who is a 4-H project manager with the Ohio State University, works with a number of different students that have visited or are planning on visiting different countries in line with the 4-H programs that are available throughout the world. And Dustin does a really good job of interviewing individuals such as today's guest. So who is our guest, Dustin?
Well, good morning, Patrick and Dwayne. Thank you for having me back again this month. And I am very honored to have as my guest Sidney Stinson. Sidney is a third year majoring in Agriscience Education with a minor in production agriculture here in the College of Food, Agriculture, and Environmental Sciences at Ohio State. So Sidney, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your involvement growing up, and what do you want to be when you grow up?
Okay. Like he said, I'm a third year here at Ohio State, and I'm majoring in Agriscience Education. I grew up in Amanda, Ohio, which is between Lancaster and Circleville, and really, that's where I got my start in agriculture. I don't know if you knew this, but I went to Pickerington Local School District growing up. And so when I made the shift to Amanda is when my eyes were really open to the whole world of agriculture and what all that could offer me. So I was in 4-H for 10 years with about 5 different projects, most of them being livestock. So I was very adventurous. My parents are probably glad that part's over. And then as a 4-year FFA member, I'm currently working toward my American degree. So with Agriscience Education, I either want to go into extension and be an extension agent or go into the classroom and do ag there and be an FFA advisor.
When I finally entered my big job out of college here with 4-H, I had the opportunity to advise a group of 4-H teens at the time they were called the Ambassadors, and Sydney was a part of that group. And I'm very blessed that our paths crossed and that they continue to cross. And she has an amazing story and some amazing photos that she's going to share with us today about the Dominican Republic.
Yes.
So Dwayne, if you'll show the map, we'll give our viewers an idea of where the Dominican Republic is. Most viewers are probably familiar with it being somewhere in the Caribbean. So it's just east of Cuba. It's there in the red on the map. And the white part of it that you see that's attached to it, that's Haiti. So the Dominican Republic and Haiti, they share an island. If I get this correctly, I would, according to the internet, called Hispaniola.
Sounds right.
All right, Sydney said sounds right, so we'll go with that. So the whole island is called Hispaniola. Obviously, they speak Spanish in the Dominican Republic, and the Dominican Republic takes up about 2/3 of that island. Sydney's going to tell us a little bit about some of the interest, what role Dominican Republic played in history in terms of some of the first explorers that came over, so I won't steal her thunder. But I do want, as we normally do, give you a little bit of background about the country. So in terms of size, it's about twice the size of the state of New Jersey. Its capital is Santo Domingo. Its population is about 1 million less than that of Ohio. It's a very important trade partner for the U.S. About half of its exports go to the United States, and about 40% of its imports come from the United States. And as you see there on the photo, you can see Florida kind of peeking out from the top, so it's relatively close to the U.S. In terms of what the industries look like there, services, tourism is a big industry there in the Dominican Republic, as well as mining and agriculture. In terms of agriculture, they're producing things like sugar, cocoa, tobacco, coffee, and a certain fruit that Sydney will tell us a little bit more about here soon. So without further ado, let's get into some of these amazing photos that Sydney took during her time down there. Oh, the flag. How could I forget about the flag? So I always like to show the flag. It's not the Olympics, but when the Olympics come back around, hopefully you'll be prepared when you see this flag come across the stage. This is the flag of Dominican Republic. So
what is the symbol in the middle?
Yeah, there's a seal in the middle, and I know it's hard to see, but at the center of that seal is a book, and that book is the Bible. Oh. And it's turned to, I forget the specific verse in the Bible. I read it, and it escapes my mind. But that's part of what's highlighted there in the middle of that flag. So, Sydney, tell us a little bit about how you got to the Dominican Republic and your involvement there.
Yeah, so between my junior and senior year of high school, I knew that I wanted to go out of the country somewhere and just experience something very different. Usually you decide to go on these trips around this time of the year, and I decided in late April that I was going to go and make the trip in August. So it was very kind of last minute decision, but I had talked to Kat Sharp, who you've had on the show before, and she went down with this organization and loved it. So I called the director at the time and I said, hey, I know it's kind of late, but can I come down this year? And they found me a group. It was actually a group from Piketon Central, so some of my friends that I had from before, and went down, my mom and I, and got to explore all of the different options. So the organization I go down with is called the Village Mountain Mission. They have 3 different sectors that they work in. The one that I was in is the construction. So we're building houses for families that really need it. There's a really long list of families, I'm sure, as you can imagine. And then little by little, depending on how many groups come down, they get those done. The second part is medical. So sometimes they have full-time nurses. And then they serve for the whole year, and they go and do home visits and things like that with patients in the different villages. But we also have like medical groups coming down from universities that will come and do home visits or do like a community outreach type clinic. And then the final aspect of it is education. So we have preschools in villages, and sometimes they teach them English classes to older youth and adults. So that's a brief overview of what all they do.
So we have proof that like Sydney actually did construction while she was down there. So tell us about, we're going to show a before and an after photo. Tell us about this.
So this house was a grandfather and his 2 grandchildren were living here. His name was Dengel. And this is what kind of the houses look like when we get there, if there is one on the land. And it took us about an hour and a half to tear down this house, including tearing up the concrete. And that was with saving as much of the wood as we possibly could for him to use for any other projects that he had. And there are no power tools. That's something that I like to mention as you go to the next picture of the finished house. It takes about 2 full weeks to complete a house, 2 crews, depending on how many people are there. But like mixing the concrete, drilling the holes, that was an interesting experience without power tools. Very labor intensive, but it's great. I don't have a picture of the inside in these slides, but it's basically like a big open room, and then we pour concrete on the floor, and then if there's any leftover block or something, we may give that back to the family to build walls if they want to build walls and stuff.
Worked on this particular project, Sydney.
Yeah, so there was 2 weeks. That's a picture from when I was down there. I was down there for 6 weeks after my senior year of high school on summer staff. And so that was 2 different groups. Each of them had between like 15 to 20 members in it.
So you're pretty good at building homes and reconstructing homes.
Yes, I've become an expert.
Do you have a project in mind?
Well, Yes.
So I mean, she's probably got some like biceps, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm really good with things.
So let's get into some more of Sydney's photos. You saw some of the things that she did, but we also want to take this time to explore a little bit about the country and the culture. So what's going on here?
Yeah, so in the Dominican, it's very popular for people to have motorcycles as their means of transportation, and they kind of pile their families or pile their groceries or whatever they're transporting around onto these motorcycles. So one of the days that you're not working, so there's 4 total days that you work while you're there, and they're split up into 2 days and then an off day and then 2 days and an off day. And this is the first off day where we get to ride motorcycles. We like pay a company to come. Each person gets their own motorcycle with a Dominican driver, and then they drive us up to, if you go to the next picture, they drive us up to La Isabela, which is where this is a replica of the first church that Christopher Columbus built when he sailed to the Dominican. And there's also a museum that kind of shows how the village that he set up would have been set up essentially, and how it would have been built, and how it worked in the markets and the houses and things like that. So that's what you do on the first off day, and you get to eat lunch in a restaurant in town, so that's always fun, and then get to go relax on the beach of an abandoned resort, actually.
I feel like my childhood is coming full circle, because I remember when we were in elementary school, they taught us the rhyme, Columbus sailed, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
Yeah.
But then they never told us to where he sailed. So finally, now I can complete the rhyme.
I definitely didn't realize that until I went down here, and it was the first off day, and I was like, whoa, history class circa 2nd grade.
Yeah, that's right. It's amazing to be able to experience that.
Yeah, it's very cool.
So let's get into a few more of the cultural photos. A classroom. To describe for us what we might see in a typical classroom down there.
Yeah, so this is a classroom, not that the Village Mountain Mission built, but just one of them that's there. We had there's a carnival at the end of the week for the kids, and that's where we had this one, which is how I ended up in this school. But there's very limited resources. A lot of times it's just the younger kids, and then while they're learning like their colors and numbers and letters and things like that, sometimes you'll have the older kids peeking into the school trying to learn and figure things out. But there's a lot of just like colorful drawings, and I'm sure, as you can imagine, just like an elementary school classroom, lots of games and things like that. You can see a pile of books back there that look like they've been roughed up a little bit from use. But
a quick question. In United States, our educational system is primary, 1st through 8th or 1st through 6th, and then junior high, and then senior high school. Is that similar down there?
Not really. There's a lot of Dominicans that I have met that didn't really go to school past elementary school. It's not super uncommon to just not have teachers show up to class that day. But I've also met some Dominicans who have gone all the way through high school and have gone on to the university.
Oh, okay.
So
good.
There's definitely a broad range of education and the standards that they have.
And in this school that you were showing us, were there multiple rooms to this building?
There were 2.
Okay.
So this is one, and then on the other side of that wall was another one.
Okay. When you first showed this to me, I don't think I could have immediately placed this in Dominican Republic. I mean, this, upon first glance, this could have even been a room, at a school somewhere here in the U.S. Minus, if you look in the upper right-hand part of the picture and you see like this open
to the outside.
Open blocks with the sun coming in, definitely would not be Ohio. But as Sydney mentioned, some of the resources you see in there, like the books, and I see there's a map hanging off the wall, maybe a little outdated, but they've got a fairly looks like this school has a fairly decent infrastructure.
They do pretty well and try to keep care take care of the resources that they do have.
Now, the Village Mountain Mission, are they a nonprofit organization? Okay, that functions. And I know we've got some photos we'll show you of some of the different groups that went down there as well. But it seems like they've got a pretty strong connection with Ohio.
Yeah, so the founder of the organization was from Ohio.
Okay.
So the story was he actually was retired, and him and his wife got on a sailboat, and they were on their way to Central America, I believe, or South America, I can't remember which one, and they stopped in the Dominican just like for a day or to get fuel for their boat, and they like fell in love with the country and saw the need and didn't leave. So
and tell the viewers, how many times have you been there?
I've been down there 4 years. This summer will make 5.
That's amazing. This is what international travel does to people, Patrick. You always talk about catching this bug. And what I respect from Sydney is that she's found a country and a culture that she loves, and she continues to go back and invest in it. There are other people like myself who, I like to dabble in a bunch of different countries and cultures, but I respect people that really connect to one and invest your time in that as well. So let's get into some of these other photos that you have. I know our viewers are especially going to want to see some of the food. So tell us what's going on here. This is an interesting story.
Yes, so this is one of my favorite memories. When I was down there after my senior year of high school, I was there over the 4th of July, and the Dominicans didn't really understand why we were wanting to celebrate and have a cookout, but they were all about it because I wanted to bake this cake, but there's a problem of like finding somewhere that has constant electricity or somewhere that is going to have electricity to be able to use an oven, and then finding someone who has an oven. So we found a woman, her name is Aridania, and she's a part of the Junta de Vecina, which is like the homeowners association of her village, and takes really good care of the Village Mountain Mission as well as members of her community. And so she has an oven, and I got to experience for the first time not being with any English speakers at all, and kind of stayed at her house with her 2 daughters and baked this cake. Very interesting experience due to my limited Spanish knowledge, as well as having one temperature for the oven. But it was a lot of fun, and it was definitely something I'll remember for a long time.
Do you need to speak fluent Spanish in order to work in this culture?
No, I wouldn't say I'm not fluent in Spanish. I know enough to be able to like communicate with them, but it's a very interesting dynamic of they love to learn English words and we want to learn Spanish. So it's like you would pick something up and be like, "Como se dice?" which is like, "How do you say?" and then whatever you're holding, and they'll tell you, and they'll be like, "What is it in English?" So it's a really cool like bouncing off of each other to learn the different languages, and if not, you play a lot of charades to figure out what you need to get done. But you don't need to know it. It's helpful, but you can get by without it.
So there's a life skill you can learn when you travel abroad. If you need to up your charade game, go to a country where they don't speak English, and you find it's amazing how you figure out how to communicate with that. Absolutely. And even, on the same notion, it's amazing the apps now that you have on phones that you're able to translate, and it really has broken down those barriers of language. So let's continue on our food theme here.
Yes.
And this is Wanda.
This is
right?
Wanda.
You told me. And what is Wanda preparing?
So Wanda is currently preparing spaghetti for the group. What she's cooking on is called a fogone, which is basically just like an open flame stovetop. And they use those big pots to prepare whatever they're cooking. Spaghetti is something that's very common for the groups. I'm not sure that it's super common for Dominicans, but her spaghetti is very different than American spaghetti, and it was my favorite meal, and she knew that. So she always tried to make sure that she made it and that I knew the day it was happening so I could hype everybody else up about it. But some of their common foods that they'll eat is like rice and beans and some sort of meat that's very, very common, and plantains.
They grow tomatoes down in Dominican Republic?
I haven't seen a whole lot of them, but that's not to say that they don't grow them there. They grow a lot of like watermelon right off of the property where we stay. It was actually just bought by a new farmer, and it's all watermelon now,
Wow.
which is really cool to see the change in agriculture in the fields, just like so close to where.
Well, especially if you're going down every year,
Yes.
you're able to see that progress.
Yeah.
What I was thinking of is, the pasta, the spaghetti, of course, is made from a tomato base.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just wondering if they also grew tomatoes down there.
That's fair. I would say yes, because now that I'm thinking about all of the different meals that we had, there was a lot of tomato-based things. So
Huh, interesting. So was there pizza down there too?
there was pizza. When you got to go eat at a restaurant in town, that was an option. It was a pizza place. I've never been to it, but I've heard it's really good.
Huh, interesting.
So you also mentioned, you're about to say that plantains
Yes.
are a big part or a big staple of the diet.
Yes.
And we have a picture of Sydney next to a plantain tree. So tell us about this.
So I got to visit, this is also right off of our property, a farm. This is where we go and we'll get some like the vegetables and things that we need, and plantains being one of the foods that we get there. And so I was with one of the staff members who is fluent in Spanish, and I was like, we don't have a group, like, can we stay and chat with this farmer for a little bit? And she was like, yeah, sure. So we're walking through this field, and that plantain tree is only like 5 to 6 months old. Like, that's
Amazing.
huge. When he told me that, I was like in shock, because 1 to 2 months they're like down at my knee. So yeah, they grow very quickly. It's very, very common for Dominicans to eat and grow plantains.
Now, are they like a banana, or what's their taste like?
Yeah, they're kind of like a banana. They're not like as sweet, I would say, as a banana. But a lot of times they'll like fry them, and that's how they eat them.
Oh, okay. All right.
Did you have? So I've had sweet plantains. Once they get really ripe, they'll fry them. But then I've also had them when they're still green,
Yeah.
and they're very starchy, almost
Yes.
like a potato, a baked
Yes.
potato.
I would probably, it looks like a banana, but I would probably compare it more to like the taste of a potato.
Now, do they have fruit every season, or is it once they bear the fruit, just like bananas? They only grow bananas, and then there's no more
Season.
the plant.
Yeah. I would say it's probably more so they stay warmer year round. So they probably have like more access to fruit than we would here year round. But I would say like summer, when I'm usually down there, is generally when the fruit.
Good time.
Yeah, great time though. Fresh fruit all the time, every meal.
Very good. Very good.
Sydney has some photos of the group that she went down with, and I love some of these action shots. So tell us about the group she went down with, but then also what did you do as a group?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, you have 2 work days and then an off day, and 2 work days and then an off day. And this is our last day there. You have a carnival with the kids. So here you can see us coloring pictures with them on a big parachute. They love to just play with you and hang out. And there was a little girl who was trying to like tell us about Play-Doh, but we didn't know the Spanish word for Play-Doh. So her way of dealing with that was to just like yell it at us. So
If you don't understand, just say it louder.
Right.
That people think that works. Yeah.
right. So that was a lot of fun working with kids, and like just like their demeanor and their excitement about everything is so great. They don't care that you can't speak Spanish. They'll just yell it at you, or they'll just start laughing and tell you to go kick the ball. But yeah, so that's what that picture is there.
in this one?
This picture is us riding to work. Now, actually, we're riding back from a baseball tournament. You can see the kids in the back left-hand corner. We're getting ready to drop them back off in their village. But we ride to work in this truck every day. It's a grain truck, so it's very bumpy. But going down the road, you wave at all of the community members, and they love it. My favorite part is like seeing their faces go from like just kind of sitting there like whatever this is today, and then you wave at them and they have like the biggest smile on their face, and they're just so happy they know what you're doing in their community, and that's a lot of fun and very, very rewarding. This picture, so this past summer, my dad actually had a baseball camp. Baseball is huge in the Dominican, and so he saw the need to get them some equipment and things, so he got them some gloves and some baseball bats and balls and helmets and things like that, and actually we just got them some jerseys, so they're fun. Very excited about that. But he held the camp in 2 different villages, so the days that we were working, he was working with them for half of the day, and then at the end of the week they had a tournament and played each other. So that's a picture from one of those.
How did you convince your dad to go?
I basically, after my first trip, I came back and I did not stop talking about it. And he was like, Sydney, it really couldn't have been that life-changing. Like, there's nothing, like, you can work here in America and get the same thing. And I said, yeah, that's true. But it's different. I, like, completely stepped out of my comfort zone, and not being around people who speak the same language as me and just seeing how happy they were when they had nothing was, like, a big thing for me. So then he came down and kind of realized, like, oh, maybe she wasn't dramatic.
You know, we only have a few more minutes, and I love the question that you always ask at the end. And, you know, that's obviously why, but go ahead.
Yeah, so Sydney, I like to, towards the end of our Culture Cast, I always like to ask, tell the viewers, why should they visit the Dominican Republic?
Oh, goodness. This is a question I think about a lot, trying to get like my friends and family members to come down. But I think that I've talked to a lot of people about this, and I definitely found like the best version of myself while I was down there. And that's not to say that that's going to stay there, but it's definitely a place to go back to kind of refocus where my life is headed, while also like being able to make those connections down there with families and seeing the impact that not only did their house have on them, but like there's a picture of all of us in front of a yellow house, and that's a family that we built for 2 years ago, and we've gone down to visit them for the past 2 years that we've come back, and now like they have a colmado, which is like a basically like a convenience store that they've built right outside of their house, like as a means of income. So like seeing those different changes in the culture and in the communities that you're working in is fantastic. And like I said, they have, materialistic wise, they don't have a whole lot, but with like their faith and their family and just like the way that they act and interact with each other is absolutely amazing.
That is fantastic. Dustin, my bucket list of going to different countries continually increase. There's a lot of things, and next time you go down, perhaps you would like to have someone carry your luggage. Dwayne, Dustin, and I would be glad to follow you around and be your little minions, if that's possible.
That would be great.
We could help build some houses too.
Yeah, you can mix all the concrete.
Yeah, free manual labor.
I get to supervise.
Or you get, yeah, you go. You get supervised.
You can supervise.
Yeah.
Goes there.
Well, I want to thank again Sidney Stinson. What a fantastic opportunity that she's been afforded. And Dustin, thank you. And I always look forward to upcoming Culture Casts.
I do as well. Patrick and Dwayne, thank you both for what you do behind the scenes. And viewers, thank you for joining us. And until next time, continue to consider where you might want to visit and join in next month to learn about a new culture.